2, 1.
All right. Welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon. Don't choke on your microphone over there. Anyway, we got two games up this week. First is The Thin Silence. So this was a game that was only given to me, or that is to say, only one code. So talking is going to be, I'm going to be doing the bulk of it. The Thin Silence comes from British developer 2PM. Seems like that's a T reference given their logo, but I'm not exactly sure. Because I thought tea time was 4 p.m. I don't know.
It was usually later. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, something's being their name is a reference to something. It's just that something's getting lost in translation. But that's beside the point. And the publisher is Nikudu Games. They sent this a couple weeks back, actually. We have quite the long queue going at any given time. Anyway, so The Thin Silence. That is a reference to depression. This is a game about depression, the darkness, negative feelings, PTSD, war. Yeah, it's a lot of heavy shit. In fact, the developers thought the topics were so heavy that there is a literal trigger warning at the beginning of the game. I think I mentioned this on Wednesday.
Which is fair enough, because some people have a hard time with content like this.
I mean, and this is the actual definition of a trigger warning. It's going to trigger, an emotional reaction. And, it's pretty extensive in terms of warnings. It even includes a helpline number. That's how serious they are with this stuff. So, if you're somebody who's not into depressing material, I'm going to say right now, look elsewhere, because this game is unrelenting in that, maybe not necessarily, depressing shit after depressing shit and what have you, but it's always going to strike a serious tone, a somber tone, even when, the actual game is going on. The soundtrack. The soundtrack is appropriately somber and melancholy and dour at times. There's no happy moments or moments of comedy or anything like that to alleviate the mood. So once again, if that's not for you, it's this isn't your game. And the Thin Silence tells the tale of Ezra Westmark, who was trying to remember his official position. He was the Minister of Borders and Security in a fictional country. I'm not sure if they actually gave it a name, but suppose it is a fictional country in a fictional universe. This is these events didn't actually happen specifically. It's just these are events that have happened throughout the course of humanity. And Ezra Westmark, is going through a journey of soul searching because, he's got a lot of regrets. I can't really talk about what's eating at him specifically without getting into spoilers. And what he did or didn't do is kind of central to the entire game. Like it's like things begin. You've fallen down a well, and you're trying to get out, and that is where the game part of the game kicks in. And I'll be honest, I think I would have preferred this if it had gone full, say, walking simulator instead of trying to be an actual game, because it does have game segments, like it does have puzzles. It has this interesting inventory system that's right out of an adventure game, where you can combine 2 or up to 3 items to make new objects. It's just, this is some of the most practical item solving I've ever seen. It's like, you take a hook and rope and you make a grapple. Maybe not the most plausible of things, but everything is pretty logical. I think the hook and the shoes equals the climbing shoes or the spiked shoes. And all of the puzzles are pretty perfunctory. They do get more complicated, say chapter 3, chapter 4, but they never really felt challenging. They always felt like busy work to me. It's like there was never any cleverness to the puzzles. It's more, this is an obstacle in your way. Make sure you have the right item selected, and then proceed. That it's unfortunate because this game does feel like it's split between 2 genres, like being a puzzle platformer and being a narratively driven walkabout adventure game. And I think it does the latter much better, much more effectively. Because that's really the focus. Like, I never felt like the gameplay was the focus. Like, it always seemed to exist out of a sense of obligation. And quite frankly, clashed with the heavy tonality of the everything. That's not to say that anything here was bad or, didn't work mechanically or is badly designed. It's just all very average. And yeah, that it's like that just left me underwhelmed. Let's see. Also worth noting is the art style. If you can see the trailer, you'll note it's going for a very pixel art style. Like, I hesitate to say retro because honestly, this is one of those games that's using the heavy pixel art 8-bit style, but is not really invoking any sense of nostalgia. This game doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't really look like 8-bit pixels. It looks maybe a little like 16-bit pixels, but mostly it's just that's what they want it to look like.
Yeah, it's like, I guess the closest that it would look like would be the Sierra adventure games of old, but keep in mind that's only only the characters are heavily pixelated and stylized. The backgrounds themselves, they look pretty modern. Like, they look pretty colorful. So I couldn't tell you why exactly they went with this art style, other than perhaps they wanted to mitigate the visual horror, so they could focus more on the psychological. But otherwise, I got nothing.
I guess the pixely style is a good excuse to not have much in the way of a face so that you can project your own thing onto it.
Right. let's see. There are also collectibles, both in terms of notes that do world building and sort of explain what's the larger plot details. Uh, although some like I hesitate to say that some things don't get explained because there is also a new game plus feature, and I also didn't get everything. I'll be honest, I just did not have the desire to do a new game plus. In fact, I'm going to wager that for a lot of people, this is going to be a one and done game.
New Game Plus is usually more for games that are more fun to play rather than emotionally taxing. Not necessarily in a bad way, but
no, this is not a bad game. It's just it is a draining game. Like especially when you're dealing with the more emotional climax parts. Like I felt like I got what I could get out of this game the first time around. Second time, I'm just like, I just felt no more. You know, I wish I could get into the specifics, but it's spoiler territory. It's just a lot of heavy shit. And in that note, the other collectible is Passage of Books. And they outline philosophy, the philosophy of the times. And so, once again, I won't get into specifics, but in spite of all of the heavy weight placed upon this work, it is ultimately a hopeful work. It's one of those darkest before the dawn, or maybe a Pandora's jar scenario, where all of the other evils of the world have been unleashed, and all that's left is hope. It's not it's not nihilism. I will say that. Let's see. The game is surprisingly longer than I thought it would be, because I think on the Steam page it noted it would take about 2 to 4 hours. It ended up taking 8 hours. That's mostly due to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the laboratory, and that one had probably not just background information, but there was a lot of subplots, let's call them, involving the staff. That there was a lot of emails. Annoyingly, those were locked behind word searches. You'd find a computer that was locked, you enter and say it was locked, and you have to unlock it by finding a word. It was kind of odd.
Yeah, that's not one of the simpler ways of doing the data unlocks.
Yeah, it's it's like on some of the longer words, that took 10 minutes. 20, I think one took 20. It was more trying to figure out exactly what they wanted. I mean, it does give you, you don't have to look for the word elsewhere. It'll give you hints what letters are in there and how long it is. But it can still take a while, especially on the bigger boards. And there's a variant where you connect numbers, one up, one down, or equal. Those weren't too hard. Let's see. Pricing. The game runs $10. $10, I think, is a fair price. Given that, especially since there is replayability, it's just,
there's replayability if you can stomach it.
Yeah, if you're Yeah, I'd say if you can, you probably want to take a break after playing this once. Mm. This is kind of the central core here. And once again, they give you a big ass warning before the game starts. If you're in a negative headspace, don't play this game. It's it's not going to help. I mean, maybe it will, but it's warning that it's going to maybe cause an emotional reaction of the bad kind. So, I emphasize this because they're emphasizing this. If you're looking for a puzzle platformer, I'd also say look elsewhere. This is one of those games where it's more about the narrative. So, I guess a third people who shouldn't venture forth are gameplay for gameplay purists. I guess to quantify what those are people who play games for fun, for like old school game design. They want to play a game of, say, Centipede,
there's not a whole ton of
Twitch gaming and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's not a whole ton of engaging gameplay here. It's an engaging story.
Yeah, it's an engaging character study, most poignant of all. And I know there are people who hate that idea that that games can focus on story over gameplay. And I'm here to tell you there is more than one way to make a game, especially in this day and age. So, it might not be your cup of tea, that's fine, but, as for what it sets out to do, it sets out to do pretty well. And yeah, that's about all I got on this. Any final comments or questions or what have you?
I'm kind of glad I didn't get a code for this because I don't like things that are depressing, but that's a personal thing. So I won't not recommend the game, but be aware of stuff before you go in for games you're not sure about.
Indeed.
Advise the headspace warning.
Indeed.
Anyway, that'll about do it for this review. Be sure to stay tuned after the break as we will be reviewing Octahedron. Thankfully, this was a 4-code game, so we all have played it. I don't think anyone beat it. Personally, I only got to about the end of the second world. I had a lot of games to play, not just in terms of review, but we had 2 demos this week, so I was kind of swamped. But we should have played enough of it to wrap the head around. So until we come back, I wish you good gaming.